I'll wave back.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Tanessa, the event coordinator for the FAU Libraries, and I would like to welcome you to this webinar, Open Access Funding, How to Pay or Not to Publish. Even though our buildings are not currently offering face-to-face events, the FAU Libraries work virtually to continue to provide support for teaching, research, and learning. We hope that you find that this webinar will do just that. Today, we are welcoming the FAU Library Scholarly Communications Coordinator, Christy Padron. She'll be taking questions at the end of the presentation, but please feel free to use the chat box at any time to submit those questions. This webinar will be recorded, and a link to the recording will be emailed to you after the session with a brief evaluation survey that we hope you'll fill out to help us plan future presentations. Now that the housekeeping is out of the way, I'd like to turn it over to Christy.
All right, thank you, Tanessa. Thanks for having me here today. This is a presentation of the Open Access Week by the FAU Libraries. Open Access Week began October 19 and runs through October 25th. It is an international movement to promote open access in publishing, research, and even to a degree, open science. If you'd like more information, see the URL library.fau.edu/open-access-2020 for more information about open access and information we have on that. The title of today's presentation is Open Access Funding, How to Pay or Not to Publish. My name's Christy Padron. I'm the Scholarly Communication Services Coordinator and Librarian here at the Boca Raton campus, and I'd like to welcome you for taking time out of your midday to be here with us. The objectives for today's presentation is to introduce a definition of open access, along with its background and characteristics. I will be summarizing some main points in the first presentation that was held on Monday. The second objective is to outline the differences between various open accessing, publishing, and funding models. I'll be going into the differences between green, gold, and hybrid open access, which are the most frequent kind in publishing, and I'll also introduce some other types of models very briefly. Then we'll go into ways to negotiate or waive open access publishing costs, and then describe one faculty member's experience with open access. Scholarly and some creative works are communicated through the commercial publishing industry. It is also known as scholarly, academic, professional, or conventional publishing. These publishers may include Sage, Elsevier, Taylor and Francis, and also a lot of other societies have their own publishing arms too, which usually aren't lumped with the commercial publishing. Just to go over the current publishing and how it contrasts with open access, in the current business model for commercial publishing, authors contribute content and usually transfer their copyright to their publisher. So when an author submits their manuscript and it gets accepted by one of these commercial publishers, authors typically have to sign over their copyright to the publisher. The publisher, though, does provide some services such as peer review management, copy editing, web hosting, marketing, and distribution, so the author doesn't necessarily have to do that on his or her own time. And as I mentioned earlier, the author transfers the copyright of their published work to the publisher, who then has control over the use and distribution of their work. There are many criticisms that came up about this business model from both academics as well as people who fund and sponsor research. A lot of it does have to do with the funding of research and scholarly and creative outputs. It's governments, institutions, and other funders like the Ford Foundation or the Gates Foundation that fund this kind of work to be done. Commercial publishing does lean a bit on unpaid labor, especially for its editorial processes. The editorial board and the peer reviewers are typically unpaid and do this usually as an expected part of their service when they're an academic. Another criticism of the business model in commercial publishing is its profits. The worldwide revenue stream for commercial publishers was $25 billion in 2017. It's probably a little bit more than that now. Just to give you a perspective of what this means, the only industries that had comparable revenues and profits were Apple and Google, and then oil, which came into a distant third. So commercial publishing is actually a bit more profitable and generates more money than those hot industries.
Hey, Christy, I just wanted to touch base and see if you're showing a PowerPoint. The attendees can't currently see it.
Oh, really? I'm so sorry about
Sorry
that.
to
Okay,
interrupt.
I thought I was. Okay, let me just share screen. Oh gosh. Okay. Well, I can provide these by request, so that's no problem. Okay, if you bear with me just one moment. So I was just going over some of the criticisms of the business model. Oh, and by the way, if you'd like to get the slides for this presentation, just leave your email in the chat and we can get those to you. So I want, as a courtesy, I want to extend for you all. So to go into some additional criticisms of the business model, I mentioned earlier that authors give their copyright to the commercial publishers, and this really affects how authors can share, distribute, or post their work. So if an author wants to give a PDF of his or her book chapter or journal article to a colleague, there's going to be some restrictions they may face because of copyright. If they want to put their work on their LMS for their students to read, they may also have some copyright limitations. So that's one thing that the creators of this work really dislike about commercial publishing. Another criticism is that commercial publishing uses a restrictive business model. A license, paywall, or subscription is used to look at the work. So most of the time when people want to read a journal article, their library must have a subscription. If the library does not have a subscription, they may be asked to read it and pay a big fee, anywhere from $5 to $100 and up, to get this information. And then costs are another big issue. So journals are very expensive, and that's known as the serial crisis. The prices have gone up probably 4 to 8% a year since 1985, more or less. And then also library funding has seen decreases. Libraries get 50% less actual funding than they did previously. And then also the costs of journals vary by discipline. If I may just pause a moment, I can't see the chat, Tanessa. Were there any questions or technical blips?
Nope, not at this time. There's just people dropping their email
Okay.
addresses for the slides after the presentation.
Okay, all right, thanks. Okay. So now we're going to go into defining open access. Open access allows free and unrestricted online access to journals and other types of content or publications. So these can be book chapters, these could also be books. And a lot of researchers are making their data sets available online and use an open access model so other people can see and work with that data. Open access had developed as a response to technological changes in scholarly publishing. It used to be more paper-based. You can go into a library, go to the bookshelves or book stacks and read a paper version of an article. But now it's increasingly online. People can go on their device, their PC, their tablet, and read this information. And with that came changes in the commercial publishing business model. And I mentioned something about the subscriptions and the paywall and those types of changes that came about. Technology does allow for easier, faster, and lower cost to create and deliver information. So that's one thing a lot of people are scratching their heads over. How come these publications increase by 4 to 8% every single year, whereas the internet and other web-based technologies are making this information cheaper to produce, create, and to share? Now we'll go into some aspects of legitimate open access publications. They do respect scholarly creative publishing. They also highly regard and adhere to its intellectual integrity and the benefits that authors gain through their work. Legitimate open access publishers maintain quality controls such as peer review. They may utilize blind peer review, double-blind peer review, open peer reviews. There's a lot of experimentation going on right now regarding the peer review process in publishing. but they do maintain these types of quality controls that are essential for scholarly publications. Legitimate open access publishers include policies for its various processes. They're going to describe their retraction policy, archiving, and the author rights and copyrights that may be involved. So the web pages will have this kinds of information when they're legitimate. Open access publishers are frequently affiliated with a scholarly organization or an institution. A lot of scholarly societies like the American Institute of Physics do have some open access publications that they do sponsor and that they publish. And also institutions like colleges and organizations may also sponsor and operate an open access publication. Legitimate open access publications also follow professional standards from Open Access Scholarly Publishers Association and also the Committee on Publication Ethics. The latter, with the acronym COPE, was started by some British editors of medical journals, and they wanted to have like an organization that discusses ethics in publishing, the peer review process, and retractions. And it does have an international membership and is highly regarded in the publishing community. So here's where we step in, the FAU libraries, in supporting open access. Our Dean of Libraries, Carol Hickson, does describe it nicely here in her statement. She's a very big proponent of open access. She's worked with digital libraries for a long time. And she says, faculty work very hard to carry out useful research, and then they turn it over to publishers who typically restrict access to those who can pay. The open access movement encourages faculty to retain control over their research and provides tools to help the faculty make the results widely available. So it's not just a matter of making all these publications freely open, it's really to make this information available for people to use so they can read it, they could research it, they can continue to contribute to the body of knowledge, and also new inventions and patents and answers to today's problems and dilemmas that we have. Now we're going to go into some open access models. Open access has various models. Some features may overlap with each other. There is kind of a blurring between certain characteristics in open access, but I do give you 5 points that do offer some distinction. And the models are going to vary in these 5 ways. First, you're going to look at the type of publisher. Commercial publishers like Sage will often have open access, as well as their regular toll or subscription-based journals that they make available, but also a lot of scholarly organizations or institutions may also make it available. Then you got the costs. Open access is funded usually by shifting the costs. So instead of having the readers or libraries pay for access, it might be the authors that pay to have their work published. And this is known as an author processing charge. Some open access journals may require this, but some do not. Open access also has another attribute about the availability of the works that they make. So how soon do they make the work available? Some open access publishers will make it available right away. Some may have an embargo period or a time where it's not available to the public. The version that they make available may also vary, and I'll go into the different types of versions of works that exist. Another way that open access models may vary is the copyright and the Creative Commons licensing. So it's a big thing, who owns the copyright? And then also the Creative Commons licenses that may be added onto a document so that it gives permission to be used without permission, so to speak. And then finally, archiving is going to be a final attribute that I'll mention here in explaining the models. And the self-archiving is the ability of an author to deposit a work in an institutional or disciplinary repository. So can an author put his or her work in, say, the FAU institutional repository or a disciplinary repository? There's a lot that are out there. So please note that these descriptions are general overviews. So if you're interested in submitting your work to an open access publisher, definitely check their web pages about their policies regarding the open access and these different attributes that I just mentioned. So we'll go into the most three common types of open access models and funding that we'll see. First is going to be the green open access. The type of publisher that usually can do this is a commercial publisher. So for those of you who have already submitted your work to a publisher, you can usually make your work available using a green model of open access. And it doesn't cost anything to do this. Green open access works by, there's an article that's published. It's in a regular commercial publisher or journal. And to make it, and you can usually deposit it into an institutional repository. To do this, you're going to have an embargo. So your publisher may say, well, if you want to put this in your institutional repository, there's going to be a delay for when you could do that. And that's usually going to be about a year. They say they do that to not affect the market too badly by having your work freely available. Now, I'm not going to answer or comment on that, but this is just what they say. And what version of your work is available is going to be your postprint. A postprint is going to be the manuscript that was peer reviewed and edited, and it's a final copy. But it's not quite the one that goes into the final issue of a journal or on the web page. Green open access, in terms of its copyright, the publisher will retain the copyright usually, and the author can request an author addendum or see what the publisher may have to say about limited uses, such as posting it to an institutional repository. And then self-archiving. Usually publishers will allow a postprint to be deposited into an institutional or disciplinary repository. In terms of your final version of record, you'll have to check their policies and probably ask them for permission to do that. So that's the green open access, which can be applied towards works that have already been published in a commercial publisher. Here's an example by some researchers at the Harbor branch. It was, I'm just going to check my notes real quickly. Sherry Pompany and John Reed were two co-authors in this article here, A Chemical View of the Most Ancient Metazoa. Okay, my little picture's blocking the full title here, but this is an article that had appeared in Naturwissenschaften journal. Now, they were able to use green open access. They deposited the final, not the final version of record, but the version before that, the postprint. They were able to deposit it into the library's digital repository here. And the image that you see is on the left here is what is in the repository. Now we're going to go into gold open access. It's usually going to be an open access publisher that will have a gold open access journal or publication. Some professional organizations may also do that too, and there are emerging commercial open access publishers out there too. The cost to publish an open access varies. Here's where the author processing charge may be required, but I'm going to go into that in just a moment. The availability of a work should be available right away. So as soon as the issue of a journal that follows a gold open access model publishes it, it should be available right there and then. And what's going to be available is going to be the final version of record. So the peer-reviewed and edited published final copy will be available right away when using a gold open access model. In gold open access, the author will typically retain the copyright. The journal itself or the publisher will usually use a Creative Commons license that allows that particular work to be shared. So if somebody wants to post a particular article on their learning management system and it has Creative Commons licenses, they can just check the terms of that license to make sure that's okay, and most likely it's going to be. That's one thing people like about open access too. It's the gold open access is that it's much easier to share work. And self-archiving is typically allowed in the gold open access model. Since the author retains the copyright, they can do whatever they'd like with the particular work. To give you an example, here's another FAU faculty member's publication. This is titled Starvation Taught Me Art. It's by Maria Fadiman, who's in the Department of Geosciences. Now, she had her article posted in this journal called Ethnobotany Research and Applications, and that's the link to it on the left. And then she added her final version of record to the institutional repository. Information about this journal is available in their About the Journal and Editorial Policies webpage, so I give you the URL there. This particular journal does not have an author processing charge, so people can submit it without paying anything. The author retains the copyright and gives the publisher the permission to post, so Maria Fadiman still has the copyright on her work here. This journal also gave information about the editorial board and how they can be contacted. This is a journal that is published by the Department of Ethnobotany in the Republic of Georgia, and it's been in existence since 2002. It has roughly 1 to 2 issues published a year. They also describe their peer review process, the publishing frequency, the ethics that they follow, and the malpractice statement, and the reviewers who did wish to be listed. I saw that this particular journal is now indexed in Scopus, which is a major list of journals that are published in the academic world. And it has an 80% rejection rate, this journal does. So not just anybody can submit a work, not have to pay, and it will be there. No, it looks like they do have a pretty stringent process for that kind of rejection rate. Now, the third kind that I'll mention is open access, is called hybrid. It's usually going to be a commercial publisher like Taylor and Francis that has a hybrid open access. Professional societies may also use this too. Now, the costs, it's usually going to be an author processing charge that's going to occur with this, and it's going to vary in cost. I've seen author publishing charges be as low as $25 and then go up to maybe $4,000. That seems to be quite a bit, but I don't want to scare you. I'll give you more information to hopefully, we won't be scared about APCs. In a hybrid open access, the final version of record is going to be available on publication. So once it's published, it's ready, it's out there, the public can read it. In terms of copyright in a hybrid open access journal, the publisher typically retains copyright, and there may be ways that an author can negotiate to have some more rights. There's something called an author addendum agreement that an author can request and fill out and give to the publisher before they give the final acceptance of a work. And self-archiving. If an article or work is published in a hybrid open access model, it's really going to depend on the publisher. So once again, the author would want to take a look at their policies about that. I'm going to go into an example next from the journal Addiction Research and Theory, published by Taylor and Francis. The FAU Libraries does subscribe to this journal. It is a journal that provides some of their articles as subscription-based. That is, you would have to have the license or subscription to it through your library or institution. And then they also offer some articles open access too. So I went into their January 2019 issue of their journal. The red box here, not OA, is an article called The Joint Exploration of Executive Subcomponents in Binge Drinking. And this is not an open access article. However, the one below it is, and this one is titled, When Should Players Be Taught to Gamble Responsibly? So this is an open access title. There's a little padlock on the lower right corner there, a little orange triangle padlock there, and that shows that anybody should be able to access this particular journal without a subscription. Just to give you some additional information on this journal, a Taylor and Francis study stated that more, like their open access articles get up to 32% more citations and 6 times more downloads. So that is one benefit. Even though authors have to pay usually to do that, they do get more attention and it's more visible. I've seen some studies say that it's roughly 18% more citations, but according to Taylor Francis, they said up to. Now, the author processing charge is really going to depend on the following in this particular journal, as well as others that follow this model. The journal name is going to be one thing, so a journal may have higher author processing charges or lower one. It's going to depend on the the article type. So a review article might cost a certain amount. An original article, original research might cost a certain amount, or a systematic or review or meta-analysis might cost a little more. I don't know, but the journal will give you that detail. And also the country of author. A lot of research has shown that open access tends to favor developed and prosperous countries, whereas the global south or emerging research nations might not have the funds to be able to cover these author publishing costs. So somebody in the US or Canada or Western Europe may be asked to pay more than someone, say, in Bangladesh or Gambia. When I looked at this webpage back in July, the APC for a US-based author to submitting a manuscript to this journal was $3,500. Now I'm going to go into some other types of open access or phrases that you might hear a bit of. The following open access terms are sometimes referenced, but their characteristics are not always agreed upon within the publishing and the library and information science field. So we like to debate fine details. We like to split hairs. But if you hear these other terms, I want to give you a sense of what they mean. A platinum open access model means that it's permanent open access with the Creative Commons attribution license without fees, and the author retains copyright. So a lot of people in the community feel that platinum is like the true open access, so to speak. You also have diamond open access, which is very similar to gold open access, but without processing charges. And diamond open access publications are typically run by volunteers. Then you have bronze. Most of the open access content that's out there is available as a bronze open access. And this means that an article or a work is free to read on a publisher's site. And there may be some restrictions on reuse, sharing, or other Creative Commons licenses. The other thing about bronze open access is that it may be removed from a web page without notice. So that's one shortcoming of bronze open access, but it does make a lot of work available. And then you have the description dark or black open access, and this is more of a description than an actual model. You've probably heard of, I think it's called Sci-Hub, or sites like that. But basically, black or dark open access describes when pirated toll access publications and works are posted on the internet. Sci-Hub, which I think is based in one of the old Soviet republics, I can't remember which one off the top of my head, is a web page where a scientist had downloaded a bunch of journal articles and other works. They were subscription-based, license only. And she, and I know it is a she that has done this, makes them available without a paywall. Now, some people say that's great, that's nice, she's freeing, liberating this information, but the publishers say she's breaking copyright, she's violating the licenses, and they've been trying to get after her for a while to take down the site without success. You know, and the authors don't really like. The authors kind of have mixed reviews. They like that their work is open, but they don't like that their work may be misappropriated or used in ways that they didn't want it to be used. So those are the other types of open access you might hear discussed. Now we're going to go into the open access and funding fees, or the part where I like to joke, how to pay or not for open access. Now, we mentioned that author processing charges or publishing charges are really a big part of what funds open access. And this is the fee charged by some open access publishers when they accept a manuscript for publication in order to cover the costs. So instead of having library subscriptions and funders that may pay for the subscriptions pay for it, it's going to be usually the authors that may do it. That's one way. These tend to be fixed, so they might have one rate for different types of works. And like I said, I've seen the author publishing charges be very minimal, like maybe you'll be paying a little more to publish than you would a meal at Wendy's, say, in the breezeway, or you might be paying $3,900, which is like, wow, I could take a nice vacation with that money, right? But as of July 2020, 72% of the journals that are in the directory of open access journals do not charge an APC. So most open access journals don't require this. I will add, though, that deceptive and predatory publishers request these, and often when you submit your work or your manuscript and before they accept it. So due diligence on a publisher is very important. So if you get an email saying, please publish with us, check out their webpage, look at their editorial board, see how often they publish. You don't want to put your work in a deceptive or predatory publisher, pay, and then find out it was not a very legitimate or a solid publication all along. Submission fees is another way that open access publications are funded. And this is something that may be requested when your manuscript is submitted, and it also may depend on the type of article. A lot of organizations may use this to fund peer-reviewed editorial processes in open access. Some traditional toll-based publications do use it. This may range from $25 to $125, and I found that there's a journal called Blood by the American Society of Hematology, charges $75 for regular articles and brief reports, and they assert that it's to cover the peer review and the editorial processes for their publication. Membership fees are another way that open access is published, and this is when a person or an institution may pay a fee to become part of a professional society or an organization that sponsors an open access publication. An example, I'll just skip down to the example, which is my third round bullet. The open access publisher PeerJ offers lifetime memberships for individuals and also institutional memberships. So if you really like the journal and it really publishes a lot of stuff in your field and on your topic, you can become a member, and they may either waive or reduce your publication costs to publish in that open access journal. If your organization or department is a member of, say, PeerJ, they may also do the same thing too. Now, in terms of membership fees, some organizations may offer different levels. I like to joke, it's like the car wash service that we have. They give us the good, better, best, and executive level of service for a certain amount of money. Well, organizations may do this too. And just like with the car wash, if I go with the executive, I can get all kinds of really special things done and detail work, and so it's the same with publishers. So if you go, each level will give you certain privileges and benefits, and then as you go up, they give you more. And examples may be, they give you more access to publications, they might send you the newsletter, or they might give you conference discounts. So instead of paying $500 to attend a conference, they might say, well, because you're a executive member, it's $100. So they may do that. And APCs are often bypassed or reduced because of membership fees. Now here we'll go into some ways to waive the membership fees. Now, as I'd mentioned, most open access journals do not have APCs or other fees, but if they do, you can request or inquire on a waiver from the publisher. You can say if you're in an under-resourced facility or place, that could be a reason. I've had a junior faculty member here at FAU who was able to bypass an author publishing fee because she's only been in the field on a professional level for 2 years. So see what they may have to offer. If your research was sponsored by a grant or a foundation, check its rules to see if it allows funds to be used for publications. I understand that the Gates Foundation does allow this, and I think like certain grants in the National Science Foundation may allow this too. You may also check on other sources of funding. Like you can see, once again, about memberships to see if your organization or your department may belong to the organization that publishes it. And you can also check on some institutional funding, like maybe some departments or institutions may have the funding to cover open access publishing costs. The FAU Libraries at this time does not offer this kind of funding, but you might want to check your department. Maybe it does, or maybe it can find money somehow. So I'd mentioned earlier that a junior faculty member here at FAU was able to waive her fees because of open access, and that was Stephanie Ortiz, who's a professor in the Department of Sociology here at FAU. I asked her some questions about her experience with open access, and I asked her what she believed were the benefits of publishing. She said, these are her words, unedited, that your work is more likely to reach a larger audience more quickly. It can be accessed, shared on social media, and accessed by journalists. A wider audience also creates opportunities for collaboration, or at the very least, more recognition of your work. I did ask if her article required an APC, and she said it did. And she said the editor had waived the charge because she was new. I think she's been at FAU for maybe a year now, or just got here. Now, just to be honest and to give you also the challenges, I did ask her about that, and she said a challenge would be the APC. But she also added that she imagined that some disciplines or departments might be skeptical of open access journal if the impact factor is lower than traditional journals. So since open access is a relatively new model, it may not have the impact factors or the other bibliometrics that are often used to determine the prestige or the impact of a publication. All right, so to wrap up my presentation, if you'd like more information on open access, we have a library guide that provides more information on these publishing models, and also links to open access publishers, and also even the commercial publishers that have hybrid journals available to them. If you'd like to see our Monday's presentation, Introduction to Open Access webinar, you can go to our FAU Libraries YouTube page and see that. So if you'd like to know about the fundamentals of open access, it is explained there in that half-hour webinar. And then also you can go to our webpage, the Scholarly Communications Home, to see other topics that the Scholarly Communication Services here covers. Since I see that we have people at our partner campuses, we are not limited to the Boca Raton campus. We can travel to you, well, right now, virtually, but in the future when we can meet face-to-face, we can do that too. All right, so I will open the floor to any questions that we may have. Yeah, other people might have the same questions too, so. I did publish an open access in a library journal. It took me about 3 months from the time that my team and I submitted it until the time that it was accepted. So yes, it undergone a blind peer review. I think it was 3 people had reviewed our work, 3 other librarians. And it was published about 5 months after I had submitted it. So I was really impressed with the turnaround time. It took me probably about a month or so for me to find out that we were able to, that it was accepted. So I was surprised that open access worked a little faster than the commercial journal did. I have a publication that was in a regular commercial publisher, and it was published in 2011. Well, the one that I published a couple years ago using an open access publisher has had more citations and reads than my previous one. Well, it could be because of the topic that I was writing about, but even though my particular work is only 2 years old, I was surprised how many uploads and reads that it had received. So that is another benefit of open access. It was a library professional organization, the Louisiana chapter of the Association of College and Research Libraries, that published it. So it was a journal by librarians for librarians, and it was administered by some librarians in Louisiana who were working with the ACRL to make this possible. So that's my individual experience with an open access journal. One of my partners on this publication is based in New York. He's at CUNY, and he deposited our publication into their institutional repository. And we have gotten over 10,000 readers and views of our work on the institutional repository that CUNY has. So I was like, wow. And it tells us where people are reading it. So we have an international readership, which I was very pleased to see. So that was my personal experience with open access in the library information science field. And I think I would do it again. You know, if I found a suitable publisher, it matched my topic, I would definitely publish again in open access. And not just because I'm a librarian and we root for open access. Okay, all right. Well, I'd like to thank you for coming to this presentation today on this, again, rainy South Florida autumn day. I don't know if we say autumn down here, but anyhow, thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, you could reach me at kpadron@fau.edu. And yes, any question, nothing too big, nothing too small. But I'd like to thank you for your time and your attention and your support of the FAU libraries and open access. So thank you, everybody.